Hi, everyone. Welcome to the monthly podcast with the one and only Mr. Derek Johnson, who's joining us as always for his geopolitical law and orders knowledge and insight that we've all come to know and love and depend on heavily in this critical season that we're in. Now, before we get started, if you're new to the podcast, as always, please do like, subscribe, and share and get this out so that others can be afforded the knowledge that you are currently getting. As you know, Derek is one of our premier guests every month that he is we are blessed to have him every month. He's been loyal to us, and hopefully vice versa. And he is a retired Army veteran, a Western music singer songwriter, and the author of two widely successful books, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part One, and now Part Two. And as always, I'm delighted and honored to have him back on. So, Derek, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, good sir?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm enjoying all the people out there, all the rhinos and never Trumpers are coming back to surface, and they're about to learn a little something about the man that they claim to support, the guy that I got to witness his best friend when I was down in Mar-a-Lago last year. His best buddy that went to college with him, um, and he was like, yeah. He's like, it's one thing people do with my friend Don. He's the only one who can call him Don. And he said, right when he looks like he's about to lose, that's when things are going to get really fun. So I guess I look at it kind of like you and I being faithful people. Um, you know, when Christ was asked to do what he did by God the Father, that was a pretty, can you imagine that task? Can you imagine being told that? Can you imagine being told you're going to be ridiculed? You're going to be mocked. You're going to be spit on. You're going to be tortured. I mean, he knew this. And President Trump, I don't put him above God and Christ and faith, but he was asked to do this. He knew the beginning, he knew the middle, and he knows the end. And so, I look at it like that. And I mean, I just look at it from any other standpoint where I don't feel like that you can inherit the kingdom of God if you don't fight for it. And I don't know what the kingdom of God's going to look like. I could be wrong. You could be wrong. We could be wrong. But I know what I tell people. I will never stand in front of God if it looks this way and him say, you could have done more. You could have fought harder. And there's already the shell and the blueprint set up. All we have to do is just follow that way, you know.
I agree. I mean, the Bible says, as you know, says, if you're ashamed of me on earth, I'll be ashamed of you for my Father in heaven. And I can't live with that, and I don't think you can live with that. And I, one of the things that drives us, Derek, I'm sure you likewise, is we have to stand before Him one day, and our judgment obviously be different, thankfully, radically different from those who don't know Him at all, which we pray for regularly. But we got to be able to just lay it all out on the line so that we can honestly say we did everything we could while we're here, and that's the best that we can do. And I know that He'll honor that. So I'm glad you said that because that actually segues beautifully, as always, customarily with you, to my first question. And I only have a couple of questions today for you, Derek, because I know that you will be able to take it and extrapolate it out as you see fit. But I think if I'm reading the pulse of our audience correctly, for the most part, I think I've come up with two questions that are at top of mind. So the first one being, Derek, is we see the recent military parade that happened this weekend, Saturday, as you know, Flag Day, also President Trump's birthday. Many comms were revealed as a result, some of which, for example, V for Vendetta, military being in complete control of Washington, D.C. as the District of America, and that we are now moving into a republic. And also, he mentioned the comm several times, as you know, 3 weeks, which would seem to signal the 4th of July as a massive demarcation point. What can you tell us about these comms and anything else that you uncovered in watching it?
Well, I was on a podcast this past week and we were talking about, if something happened at the parade, what could President do lawfully with the military? And I'm like, well, he doesn't have to do anything lawfully. It's already been invoked lawfully, the military occupation, the continuity of government, and everything. So, a lot of that was honoring our past. President Trump has had to be very delicate with that because men and women did answer the call to duty during the times of what was perceived to be wars. What I've been doing lately is saying, look, I mean, I'm not attacking veterans out there. I've had that before. People say, oh, he's a few. Say I attack veterans. I'm like, no, but we got to be able to sit and communicate on why we were in these wars. So a lot of these replications, the uniforms were really cool. So it was a tip of the hat to the Army, who's my beloved branch, whose birthday is June the 14th, 1775. The oath of enlistment was birthed the same day, June 14th, 1775. And then the flag, the Betsy Ross flag, not the Union Jack, which was the first, but the Betsy Ross was sworn in on June 14th, 1777. President Trump's birthday just happens to fall on that. So a lot of that was straight up real visuals for people honoring our 250th birthday because 250 years being a nation, when that comes up next year, it's a big, big deal, especially with an ideology. So there was a lot of that. Now, there's a lot of things about flag being handed to President Trump, which can signify a death, but it also we do retiring of flags as well certain times, and they can be folded the same way and presented. So you can take it for whatever you want to do. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with that either way. But there wasn't a lot of things that were, necessarily like super comms. I saw a lot more people on the internet claiming. I have to put my quotes up, claiming to be President Trump supporters and claiming to be, patriots, whatever you want to call it, who are saying things about what was going on and whatnot. And I'm like, well, that's not exactly how I perceive certain things. So, the we got to get to a place where what's going on is going to flip this whole narrative for exoneration for President Trump. And it wouldn't be a show of arms in the wrong kind of way. What he's doing right now is constitutional and it's lawful. And that's what's dominating the waves right now with like Bernie Sanders was just posting a while ago that it's unconstitutional what's going on using the military. If we got involved with Iran, that is a pure blatant lie. And I hate using the term lie because that word's been misused, but the military right now are in a military occupation, military government, continuity government. And this was a celebration that was needed in the middle of it. And everyday life goes on around this. I mean, President Trump is doing certain things and Gitmo planes flying back and forth. I mean, everything's still going forward. But I think a lot of people out there are just, trying to fit too much into a circle. Sometimes that old saying, trying to fit a square into a circle, which I've never understood one way because you can make the square real big and make a circle go in it. But still, it's a pretty cool concept. But I didn't see anything that was like that. The other thing I saw some patriots, quote unquote, saying was that the soldiers weren't marching accordingly. We have celebration marches, and then we have our duty type marches. All right, and that's easily solved by going and reading things in Army celebrations, since it was the Army. But there's also other branches. You could go read the celebration publications, how the formations are set up differently. So there are ways that you can march differently, and the difference in moving in formation, kind of like what you saw with the quote unquote soldiers with Biden on January the 20th, 2021, that was a whole different kind of bearing. So there's a good contrast there if people go look at that. I think that there was the soldiers this time was doing some at ease marching. So there's certain things you can do in a celebration. The thing you look for is the uniformity. That's what military is about. So all the uniforms were the same, even though they replicated days of old, whatever period of history they were showing. all those uniforms were the same. When you go back and look on January the 20th, 2021, there were mixed match uniforms, even with the Army. You'd see multicam, which is a form of camo. You'd see multicam with like ACU pattern. You'd see all these different patterns mixed here, there, and whatnot. Gator necks, what we call a gator neck. Some are wearing black, some are wearing brown. No, that's not the military. Military, it don't matter if you're a National Guard unit and you're in California and a National Guard unit in Virginia. We have the same uniforms. We have the same gear. We have the same everything. And that's why they call it uniformity. So I didn't see anything that was like drastically stood out that people could just pinpoint and give you some kind of, extra bonus, because where we are now would be an extra bonus. It wouldn't be like, oh, that's the validity. So there wasn't anything there like that. But you could add, you could add in the flag if you want to do that, if you want to go that route. I would say that would parlay into it everything.
Yeah, thank you for that, Derek. Because you have to remember, as you do, most people on this side of the aisle are on the civilian side, so they don't have the purview of knowledge that you have or the experience. That's why, and for all these many and sundry reasons, you're here to help kind of, separate fact from fiction. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard you say basically is that the significance of the event itself happening, the officiality of it, the timing, going back to historical markers, was in and of itself more important than necessarily the comms people might try to read into it, because that's just people's natures. They want to try to analyze and figure it out, kind of, I don't want to say game the system, but try to get some type of competitive edge in reading between the tea leaves. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because we can't take away from soldiers in history when I signed up, I mean, I was still in that, you know, age where I was thinking 9/11. I had enough evidence from my grandfather. I didn't doubt my grandfather. But I didn't I knew that certain things were corrupt, but you don't know until you know. And so many people think that you have to been knowing your whole life to be like this patriot or this warrior or whatever. And I'm like, no, you awaken when you awaken. And so, you know, the significance of that parade, I mean, between the Army's 250th and then also your flag that was sworn in on the same day. It was sworn in on the same day for that significance in 1777. All right. And then you have your first oath, which the oath back then was drastically different than what it is now. It still said to support the nation, and it was a 1 year contract, basically. It's what, if you go read the origin of it. But still, that oath was established, and oaths go way back thousands of years. And so it's the significance of that, but also the dedication, the integrity by all the men and women who have raised the right hand and were willing to put their life on the line. Doesn't matter. That's why I try to tell people, it's like all these veterans out there that attack other veterans because they didn't do X amount of years, X amount, has nothing to do with that. When you raise your right hand, you're already taking an oath. You're taking a leap of faith, and you're putting your whole body into God's hands first, and then the military. And that's why the military right now is going through an overhaul process with Pete Hegseth and all the things. And what he's saying right now, he's kind of humorful in another way. We're going to be fit, not fat. I mean, there's a lot of things that's being said, but it's true. When you go in the military, you adapt to the military. It don't adapt to you. And you're supposed to be uniform for a reason. Everyone is in basic training. The reason why they yell and cuss in basic training is they create an environment of chaos where when you can train in that, when you just train in it, then you can operate in it. Get nothing to catch you off guard, chaos, confusion, and all the different things that can happen. So there's that, and so basic training, they break you down as an individual, as a person. If you went in, they break Jon down as Jon, and then they build you up as a team. And that's why it's not for everybody, and it shouldn't be. I've never been even for a draft from the standpoint of just a draft for bureaucracy purposes. I think it could help in a lot of ways for appreciation, but I don't in other ways because of the way it could have been used in the past. So military is a unique structure in itself. It's discipline. And it's every day. I mean, it's like for example, if you're a civilian, right, and you're trying to lose weight, you know how hard that is to work out every day, to like train yourself to go, okay, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to drink that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to eat after this time, I'm not going to, and then you got to add whatever it is that your you know workout, whatever your plan is, your strategy, right? And you got to be consistent with that. Military, guess what? You get that. And when no matter what rank you are, when everybody comes in either as a private or a specialist, whatever you come in as on the enlisted, or if you're coming in over here as a lieutenant, like you wake up every morning, it's the same thing every morning. And you're going to be told what to do and you're going to do it. And if you don't do it, you're going to get counseled. Then X amount of counseling statements, you're going to get courts martialed. And then when you get courts martialed, depending on how dumb you are, whatever you're doing, they're going to either get you out of there and they're going to strip you of all your benefits. They're going to dishonorably discharge you. They strip you of your benefits. That goes on your record. All right. Even on your civilian record. And so, you can't go down and try to claim benefits later and all these other things. Like it's a whole other world, but it's a world that is every day the same thing. Not what you're seeing and the jobs and the missions, but it's every day the same thing with the routine, the discipline, your uniformity. And so, yeah, 250 years, no other republics made it that long. And so, it's a big deal from that standpoint. And I'm just trying to teach people too that look, enjoy this while you're going through it. You're still breathing, you're still living, you still have wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, kids, grandkids, godkids, whatever you have out there. Like you're living life. Like we should never, and thank God we will never go through this again anytime soon, because this is a unique set of laws and orders that did put the military on our turf. All right. And it required very, very strategic, but also constitutional laws to do so. But we should never want that, but it had to because of what festered up. But enjoy this time period and celebrate the celebrations while President Trump's showing you those. And that's why I tell people, listen to the man you claim to support. Everything's in place. Every law and orders there that you need to see. Every calm by him first is there that you need to see. And then all those who are loyal under him, as he told everybody, no one from my first administration will be with me anymore. So you got to listen to him. And when you do, it's kind of like that saying where it says, you can't hear what God wants for you when you've already determined it yourself, right? That's we're all guilty of that. We've all done something in our life where we didn't listen to God, and we've listened to what we wanted first.
Right.
And then you went maybe bought a vehicle you couldn't afford, or you couldn't afford the insurance and all of it together. Yeah. So everybody's done something before where we listen to ourselves and what we wanted versus listen to God first and him saying, hey, now's not the right time. I may bless you with that down the road, but wait right now. So it's kind of like that, where I'm not putting President Trump above God whatsoever, but he has been called by God to go through this and be the face of this whole thing. And there's others like us who have been called to be put in our position. And, it's just part of history, but enjoy it while you're going through it, because we're not going through this again anytime soon. Thank God.
Man, I'm just sitting here smiling, Derek, because truer words were never spoken, brother. I mean, that's so, you said so much in just that alone. And, what I hear you saying in all this is gratitude. This is something I talk about with some of my men and some of the church groups or prayer groups that I'm ensconced in. And it's a thing I do every day with my walk with God, is just focusing on the gratitude and, how far he's taken us and the journey. It's a journey. It's not just a destination, right? Everybody wants to get from here to here in 2 seconds. But in life, it doesn't work that way. And I was kind of chuckling to myself when you were talking about, us getting ahead of God, right? And, when we were younger in our walk, you and I, in our teens and 20s, I always make the joke of I call it the plane epidemic, like you're in the cockpit and you think you're the head pilot. Hey, God, I want to do this. Is that okay? Great. You don't even give a breath to let him say yes or no. You just barreling ahead with your agenda, or I was thinking with you and me, like, dating people we shouldn't have dated because we weren't patient enough to wait on his best. And then you get to a point where you're like, you don't want anything but his best. And that's part of the gratitude, right? You're not where you want to be, but you're not where you were. And you're appreciating the journey, like you said. So yeah, thank you again for confirming that. The next question I have for you, Derek, is as widely anticipated by many, we saw Thursday evening an ambush attack, which I'm talking about optically. I think obviously it was pre-planned in terms of Israel attacking what we long thought about from the late great Kim Clement, the attack on the Iranian nuclear power plants, specifically the uranium enriched sites being destroyed, as well as counterattacks from Iran. Netanyahu had an interesting in-country message that he conveyed to the people of Iran in terms of supporting them and helping them in their agenda to topple the corrupt Iranian regime since the revolution that has long sat both over Iraq and Iran, as you know yourself. What are your conclusions on all of this? And are we going to see the grave surrender of Iran soon? And is Netanyahu part of the tribe of Judah or something else entirely different?
So that's the loaded question there. Yeah. Okay. So, well, what I do is I tell people, look, I mean, I'm not an expert in Judaism and even Hebrew origin whatsoever. I have a buddy literally right down the road from me, who is, and he's the one that was reading my documents 4 and 5, 6 years ago, and was trying to grasp what was going on. And it's like, man, it's a lot of information. I'm like, hey, Hebrew is too, man. Like he would overload my brain with Hebrew like all the time. I'm like, man, like we're both in the same boat. We have our, and he's been studying that for years. And so he's the one I went down the road and made the video for that went viral. I mean, so but so I try to tell people, look, here, I try to be, and I know where God put me, and I know why they chose me to do what I'm doing. Is because I can retain a lot of information, but I also try to condense it for people and say, look, until you have a solid foundation in what a commander in chief's working with lawfully, but also as a president, because it has to look that way. Even though I can make a case where he's never been president by presidential, straight up regular presidential standards. All right. I can show where the whole thing, 45-47, the whole thing is the strategic operation, the whole thing. Because a presidential emergency action document was established by Eisenhower with a continuity government. They're a part of the plan of a continuity government. So it's like the continuity government's here and they're there. So they do coincide, but the cog is the most important term first. And then your presidential emergency action documents. There's 4 ways that military pairs with federal. They're executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties. Those are the components of a presidential emergency action document. There are only 4 components. All right, now there's a few ways to slice this pie. When you go to Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, 2016 Special Operations Command, all right, which is unconventional warfare, meaning it's not conventional for a reason. It's unconventional first, which requires an expert and people of special operations to be able to break down that alone. But then they also have to know how to pair it with what's going on lawfully with the president, which they should be able to, because in our Special Operations Command booklet, it says right above the pyramid that I told everybody to go get in their life on page 11, right above it, it says that whether or not the United States government is on board with the unconventional warfare or not. So it's telling you right there the military can act without the United States government straight out the gate. All right. And then it says by what? A presidential finding or an executive order. All right. So if all these things that President Trump are doing were unconstitutional, then all he would have to say in a normal setting, even though I know it's not, but for the civilians out there in a normal setting, all President Trump would have to say is this. All right, well, if it's unconstitutional, unlawful, then why did you leave it in the laws all these years? See, what I haven't done, and I'm going to start doing it, and I need to do it a little bit more clear for people. There's a difference in a law and an order. All right, you hear laws and orders, the law is what's already been passed in law. It's your foundational component. Where if you say, well, that's unlawful, but you say, okay, well, let's go look and find if it's unlawful or not. You go look up the law. Then you can see an order, all right, an executive order. So like law enforcement have all different kinds of orders, but then they have laws of what they fit on. So President Trump's executive orders that he put into place, the ones I talk about that make no sense why Joe would continue those. If President Trump's a threat to democracy, even though we're not a democracy, all right, or a dictator and all the other things are yelling, then why would Joe, quote unquote, Joe, continue 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that are all deporting illegal migrants? All right, enforcing Doge, taking back the Panama Canal, all the trafficking, combating all that, combating opioids. I mean, there's so many things these executive orders are doing. It wouldn't make any sense to yell all those things and then turn around and go, hey, why didn't you revoke any of these or just let them terminate? So executive orders, ladies and gentlemen, do not require legislation. That is an executive presidential order. All right. And then national emergencies have an automatic 2-year termination on them if they're not continued. Continuation of those requires a pen, paper, president. All right. So then you go look over at the war order, the War Powers Act. Congress tried to put limitations on presidents in the 1973 War Powers Act, where they made it to where a president had to declare a national emergency to use the military. All right. That was unconstitutional. So you'll hear people out there that'll try to trip you up. You'll hear people saying, oh, isn't that part of the corporation? Why would President Trump be using corporate laws? Because you got to unravel those corporate laws. You got to beat them at their own game, right? You got to take their tactics and use it against them. And then therefore they won't be screaming, you can't do that because, well, you shouldn't have left it in law. You left it here. Y'all left this here. So if I can't use it and also enforce it, then why'd you leave it here? So see, they can't deem anything unconstitutional. And if they're saying that on their platforms, they're being controlled right now because this is an operation. We overtook, we're running a counter psychological operation. All right. We're making all these liberals flip their, what they call their ideologies. They're now rooting for war in Ukraine. They wanted the Ukraine war to prolong. Liberals in the 90s were yelling at Bush, and rightfully so, for oil wars. So you got to know what's going on narrative wise. So when President Eisenhower established that continuity government and those presidential emergency action documents, they were to put, if they were to be used lawfully, they were to put us in a defense mode, meaning like we're protecting our turf. We're not going to other nations. We're protecting our turf. All right. Now, if another nation attacks us, then we annihilate them when they're attacking us. All right. And baby, we do have to go over there. But again, we've never had anyone attack us like that. Vietnam didn't attack us like that. All right. Iraq, Afghanistan. Most people right now think that 9/11 was real, but there's a Supreme Court docket case already lawed by President Trump, March the 19th, 2024. All right. That's going to open a massive can of worms on Obama, Osama bin Laden, Hillary, and Benghazi. It's already lawed with the Supreme Court. So you got to know first, I always set that standard first, how the laws are set up. They were never supposed to pass these national emergencies down from president to president to president. Think about the word emergency. If John had an emergency here and he had to leave the screen, why would he keep sitting there? I mean, that would make no sense. So an emergency with another nation where you're blocking the entrance of those aliens, all right, why would you let a national emergency run from 1979 to present day? This executive order that I'm about to talk about is older than me, all right? I'm 42 years old. This order is 46 years old. Jimmy Carter declared a national emergency with Iran in 1979. And then he blocked the entrance of Iranians in November 1979. All this is on document. All right. That order has been continued every 2 years by every president. All right. So what you got to know is this: President Trump couldn't start a foreign war. He couldn't. That's the line that was drawn in the sand, and what separates President Trump from the corporation. All right. The laws and orders and vote also outline the military occupation as prescribed by law, the continuity government as prescribed by law, and not a war that all these other bureaucrats started. This is how it's really supposed to look: a defense mode. President Trump recently nominated someone. He said, well, he probably was an offensive strategy guy, but he's more of a defensive. That's a shot right there on the bureaucracy. All right, straight out the gate. So we're in a defense mode. All right. He said, we've been invaded. That's your Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, invasion and rebellion of public safety. That's your legislative branch. That's not the president who suspends the Constitution. That's the legislative branch who does that. All right, Article 1, legislative branch. Now, fast forward, December the 20th, 2019, like a broken record. Anybody who follows me knows you're about to know what I'm about to say. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That is the most recent amendment to the War Powers Act. All right. Guess who introduced that bill? A Democratic House under President Trump. A Democratic House introduced a war order that's set up this war that we're in right now? Yes, that's correct. Democratic House of 2019 introduced that bill on the floor. And it's not a bill, it's actually a war order. But they introduced it, meaning it went in because it was going to need funding, but it went in through. Then the Senate, Republican Senate, passed it. That's very key right there, because that is the very order that's the foundational regular and irregular forces and our joint partners that you've been witnessing. When President Trump federalized the 1 million reserve components, still active, not revoked by quote unquote Joe, all the orders as prescribed in that clause are under that clause that was put there by a Democratic House first. Very key. All right, so Iran, Executive Order 12170. Executive Order 12170. When you pull this up now on Google, it's going to pull up the Federal Register, but it's not going to look like the new modern register. It'll say View in PDF. Click on that, and it sends you to a government page. You can see the actual brown paper where they screenshot it, right? So it's like just like a photo. You can read it. All right. That order's been in place all these years. So it was very key President Trump didn't start a foreign war. He got Russia to go in Ukraine. When he ended the nuclear forces treaty with them, we had a treaty with them. All right. When people hear a treaty, they think, oh, wouldn't that be your safeguard? Wouldn't that be your actual thing you need in writing? No. When you go actually read that and see what getting out of that treaty meant, it actually supports what this thing called a MAD doctrine, meaning like a nuclear peace. All right. Nash equilibrium. All right. That's what that means. All right. He had Russia going to Ukraine. All right. In a new establishment. That's why they put a new date on it, where the bureaucrats couldn't take credit for this. They put a new date there. October the 7th, 2023. They showed a new war start in Israel. All right. In 1 week's time, ladies and gentlemen, Romania, Bulgaria, Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Japan, Poland, Sweden, Norway, Argentina, Colombia, Tunisia, Algeria, United States, Russia, Ukraine, all these nations were in Israel in 1 week's time. Military operations in Israel at the October start of that. And then the next month, the New York Times and all of them told you it was going underground. It went to the tunnels. All right. You go back here in 2018, you wouldn't have known this, more than likely, because if you're not a military veteran, you wouldn't know this. But we have a thing called military.com and armytimes.com. We got a bunch of different publications out there. Military started putting out, Army put out military.com. June 24, 2018 is the first article by the military.com, where it says that the Army is spending $572 million training our 26 of 31 combat brigades for subterranean warfare, for underground fighting in dense urban areas. All right. President Trump is the first president in United States history to establish subterranean warfare strategic plan. We've always had tunnel wars and tunnel rats, but not as big as this. All right, we have a strategic plan in place, special operations, how to combat that. Then you have your money. You also heard President Trump say, follow the money. Well, you can't follow the money and trap the money if you don't have people who can get in there and infiltrate and see where the money's going and how it's operating, who's operating it, how they're operating it. All right, so there's that. Then you have the 2019 articles, all right, where it says in the Washington Examiner, same things. Well, you got to go back and listen to President Trump. He said, we will never pay for anything again, ever. He's making the deep state pay for it. So in August 2019, you already have an article by the Army publications saying shaping the deep fight. It's talking about the next wars will be in tunnels. This is military law now. This is our war colleges teaching our commanders this. All right. This is what the commanders learn, not the enlisted, but this is what commanders were learning. There's an article you can pull up called Shaping the Deep Fight, the 21st Century Fight, Shaping the Deep Fight. All right. In there, $572 million. That's dated 2019. Also, the Defense Intelligence Agency, same time period, August 2019, put out a publication for Iran, talking about their military power, talking about underground facilities. It even mentioned North Korea's underground facilities, 8,000 plus tunnel systems, all right, in North Korea alone. So they're showing you that. Then August 2019, Washington Examiner, 572 million. All these direct 572, 572, 572 Army publications. Also Canadian publications that say we support Israel and United States operations, and they're $572 million. There's that. So there's all validities. Then you move forward, the state of Oklahoma, the great state of Oklahoma, who was all counties went red this year in this election. All counties. The only state to have every county fully red, the great state of Oklahoma. There was a court case, Johnson & Johnson, opioids. They lost this case and they were forced to pay a fine. Well, President Trump's the one who has the executive order against combating opioids, and he's the one who said we're never going to pay for anything again. So what are the odds that all these Army publications, 2019, 2018, all of a sudden you have Johnson & Johnson losing an opioids case, and they are forced to pay $572 million. What are the odds of that? It's not there. All right. So if you believe that that's a coincidence, you need to go to your local casino today. And I'm not a big component of gambling. I know the Bible says it's against it. But if you believe that, you probably need to go try your luck. All right. Because you have better odds of hitting about 3 state lotteries in one day than believing that was a coincidence. All right. So there's that. So all what's going on in Iran, if we did want to get involved, even combatively, that executive order from Jimmy Carter left President Trump with the cleanup process. President Trump is cleaning up all these things that these bureaucrats left open. Why did they leave a national emergency open for 46 years? That is not an emergency anymore. All right. Obama left Yemen open. A few months ago, you heard all the liberals, oh, you said your president wasn't going to start a foreign war. Why are they bombing Yemen? It was your president. It was Obama who opened this executive order and declared the national emergency with Yemen. So President Trump's cleaning up what the bureaucrats left open. And you have to do it with diplomacy first, always. But if that don't work, then you got to go with whatever they're responding with. And who knows what these bureaucrats promised them. You know, when people get that taste of money, John, you know, the Bible says the lust of money. It's not money. It's a lust of money, right? When they get a taste of lust of money and then power and the resources that come with their unlawful money, right? Then when they build up all this stuff and they go to take it away, it's a hard fall for a lot of people. Same thing with celebrities when they go bankrupt, right? They're so used to these lust plush things that they built their mind to believe is their worth and, oh, I deserve this, but then they can't afford it or they do something crazy and it gets taken away. It's a mighty, mighty hard fall. And a lot of them, unfortunately, commit suicide because they cannot take that what they thought they had and deserved, and all of a sudden it's gone. So President Trump had to do all these delicately, all right, but he did it with a what? A military. This is all a military occupation. It's all a military operation. The only way he could have done all this was lawfully, but with military. Being able to say, hey, we got the largest military in the world. If you want to strike, we'll bring you hellfire and brimstone. As he's told all of them, we will wipe you off the planet. All right, but we don't want to. Take this deal now or face the consequences. People got to remember Afghanistan, that old dude over there was barking off at President Trump straight out the gate, 2018, somewhere in there. And we hit him with a Moab, the mother of all bombs, 25,000 pounds. You didn't hear no more barking out of there anymore. All right. So sometimes, like Roosevelt used to say, you gotta speak softly and carry a big stick. All right. And so it's people don't get that concept who's never been disciplined before, but my dad never abused me. Not one did he ever lay a hand on me. He never had to because I listened to him. But when he said something, when he gave that command, his voice alone commanded that. But I knew he would if I ever crossed his boundary. I knew he would punish me and discipline me. And so many people didn't have discipline in their life, and they can't grasp that concept of what President Trump, when he says peace through strength, people don't understand that because they didn't grow up with any of that mentality. But that's how you keep people in check. You put the fear of God in them, and then you'll find out how much they want to talk after that. Going back to our choices in life you were talking about earlier. I mean, when I was growing up in high school, I was at a country high school, country boys, cowboys. If you said something, you better be prepared to get your head knocked off or knock theirs off, depending on what it was. All right, but you didn't bark too often. You knew better. And so right now, what's going on with Israel? There's so much chatter about Zion this and Zion that, this and that, and people are forgetting what happened in the past. Even with JFK, history will reset that, no doubt. And President Trump's already promised to reset that. But saying that oh, it was Israel who did that years ago, and acting like the Israelis right now are all guilty because something what happened in the past, that's the wrong attitude to have. That's no different than anything else in life where something was cursed way back here, and then like I know Pablo Escobar Jr. and I know Lucky Luciano's great nephew. But if they never tried to reset, if they never tried to do something good for humanity, and if they just had to always walk around with a stain on what their family members did, my God have mercy. I mean, isn't that the whole point? Isn't that? I mean, we teach live and let live, but look at all the people who say live and let live, but they don't. And they also don't judge a person by their character and their fruits that they display. Consistency does that, though. Like I tell people with me, in the first get-go, when I first came onto the scene, I told people, look, the way you know that I'm telling you, go research what I'm telling you. Yeah, that's how you tell who's truthful, who's knowing, who's knowledgeable, but also who's supposed to be where they are. And you do that by what they're providing you. And a lot of stuff out there right now that's tripping people up, it's just surface level stuff. And, like what's going on with Tucker and what's going on with Alex Jones and what's going on with all these big platforms. Just because they're big and they got big numbers, that don't mean a thing. You don't know them. You're not with them when the camera turns off. All right. And they haven't been consistent. If they were consistent, they'd have been talking about laws and orders a long time ago. All right. Not strong opinions and surface level stuff like, oh, we got to stand for our rights. Anybody can say that. But laws and orders that support the foundation, that support the Declaration, that support the Constitution, not just laws and orders because they're laws and orders. I'm not that person. I show people what President Trump's working with. And that's how you're going to get peace and solace in your life out there, ladies and gentlemen, is if you love President Trump and the military, he's not acting alone. He's just the face of it. He was willing to put his name, brand, image, likeness on it and his family. That's it. All these laws and orders are generals and experts of military law and what he can do lawfully and what the military can do lawfully to reset history. And that's what you've been witnessing. It's a reset of the Declaration as it's prescribed, and a reset of the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial as it sits. They were put in that order for a reason, and everybody's witnessing that. So, you know, Tehran and all those, you get the executive order with Iran talks about Tehran. So, you know, what are the odds of President Trump saying evacuate Tehran? All right. So all these things are pre-planned because I'll shut up here, but PEDS, presidential emergency action documents that coincide, that go into the continuity of government, they're under that umbrella, right? They're a part of the continuity of government. This is your continuity of government. That's your PED. Those PEDs expand the power of the president, but they're pre-drafted. They're pre-planned, meaning we already know this is going to happen. This is what we're going to do. All right. And they can do it lawfully because pick your poison, right? Oh, well, we have an executive order here open with Iran since 1979. Oh, we have an executive order here open with Yemen since 2012. Oh, so all President Trump, they had everything they needed to say, we're going to pre-plan this and put this on, because there were so many things open in the past that needed to be solved along with our current problems. So it's you know, it's a beautiful thing in another way. I mean, I'm the one that's been saying also, you know, be careful what you're saying out there. Don't be chanting and rooting for death and justice that kind of way. Root for punishment and discipline and standards again. And the people who are going against the laws and orders that have records will meet their punishment and their fate. But the Bible also talks about that as well, about the, you know, it does say an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but even in our law war manual, it's just you treat your prisoners of war with dignity all the way up. They'll get a last meal, they'll get a chaplain, but we should never root for death the wrong kind of way, because what the liberals are chanting for right now, the assassination of President Trump, is no different than someone wanting Hillary and all them to be dead the same way. We have to reset this the correct way. Justice will come, but a lot of people right now are tripping up on the hiccups, and like you said, it's not a destination, it's a journey, right? And so we're never going to get to a place where laws and order stop. We're never going to get to a place where we can't fight and not you know, we shouldn't want that. We should never get to a place. We're always going to fight for America. We got to maintain and sustain what's taking place. So it's got to get in the right mindset. Everybody has to reset their foundation and reset this right here and know what the commander's working with. And it's all been done lawfully.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of said a mouthful there, Derek. A lot to process, of course. As I'm just listening to and taking it all in, as the audience is, of course. And as you know, the Bible, there's no word of the coincidences as a coincidence in the Bible, right? And as you know, the love of anything over God as an idol, whether it's money, family, your career, your house, your title, anything that supersedes Him is a sin. And you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be rooting for death. We should be rooting for clarity and peace and understanding. You know, as you know, John 10:10 says, the enemy comes to kill, seek, and destroy, but God came to bring life and life everlasting, right? And then we want to see that truth come out. And that's obviously part and parcel of what you're helping us to do for the collective here. So yeah, I appreciate the clarity and the deep. Go ahead.
Oh, you said something that I had a preacher one time that and I still talk to him, but he's more like a mentor too. But man, I mean, he knocked me. I mean, just like upside the head one day in a virtual kind of way, but spiritual too. We were talking about when God gives you something, and you got something, all right, and it's you know, beneficial to others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever it may be, whatever gift you may have out there. That verse right there, steal, kill, and destroy. He said, man, you know, you can't destroy something if you weren't trying to kill it. And then you can't kill something if you didn't try to steal it first. Right. And I'm like, man, that's a powerful way to look at it. Like the devil, right? What's going on in the world? This evil, this hatred, this malicious, this vicious, all these reprobate minds, all these people just gnashing at the teeth. It's a straight up analogy of what is going on. And in the 23rd Psalms, where it says, I will prepare a table in front of your enemies. I mean, God's telling you way back when, all these scriptures of days of old, that there were enemies back then. Same thing, right? And to be a warrior, if you have something, and when people see me defending myself and all these other things, I'm like, look, you know, I have something that the devil don't like. All right. And I gotta battle the devil first, right? That's me, my personal walk. I gotta know how to conquer him daily, right? And I gotta make sure that I'm not compromised daily personally before I ever get to you on the platforms,
Sure.
right? And that goes with consistency. That goes with God first, prayer first, and
Sure.
consistency. But still, it's a daily walk. It's a daily battle. It's a daily now, I hate to use the term practice because you don't want to get in a routine the wrong way, but it is a daily practice in the right kind of way when you're, operating in faith and you're operating in God. And so people need to realize that what President Trump, what's going on, nothing can stop it. It's all God. It ain't a thing in the world that can stop it. And it wasn't in 2015, it wasn't in 2016, but it sure ain't now. So you gotta walk really. That's why I tell people, man, if you don't feel that baptism spirit fall over you, hearing it like that, not because I said it, I don't mean it like that, but I mean if when you apply that, what's going on right now, lawfully by God, man, that should make you want to rise up and run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at things. And when God called me to this position, there was only one time you'd have to know me personally. People out there would have to know me personally to know this. But there was one time where I kind of, was laying in bed and I got to overthinking, and let those thoughts do that.
Oh,
And
sure.
I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's a cowboy too, and he said, "Man, would you go back and take away what you said on August 24, 2022? Would you go back and not hit that play button?" I'm like, not a chance in the world. He goes, okay, then cowboy up. He said, God brought you to it. He's going to lead you through it. All right. You were called for this. And, that's what everybody has to apply to your life. No matter if you're in operations or not, doesn't matter. You're here. You're at this appointed time in history. And if you're 40 years old and you live to be 90, if you're 50, you live to be 90, whatever. I'm not saying it's going to take that long. I'm just making a point, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're whatever age you are and you live to be an old man or woman, you're going to live through this. All right. So, I'm going to do it with a smile. I'm going to do it flexing my muscles, and I'm going to do it the way God called me to be here. And the devil ain't taking nothing from me.
Hallelujah. Well said. Excuse me. Last question for today. Excuse me. Because this comes up quite a bit, as you know, the whole timing. And I don't know what you can or can't share, because I know obviously once you're in the military, you're always in, you have certain connections, President Trump and, all these forms and fashion. But there's a lot of discussion or continuity of discussion, Derek, with respect to the EVS/EAS timing. What, if anything, can you share about that for the public to give them some assurance it's coming and sooner than later? And how do you see that all sort of playing out?
I have a couple, scenarios I think could happen with it. I don't ever make predictions or anything like that, just because I tell people, if you'll walk in faith daily and then read what President Trump's doing daily, that's enough as it is. Because especially some people are struggling to grasp just the whole operation period. Because it is vast. It's a lot of layers of information. But Chet Atkins, one of the greatest guitar players of all times, he I mean, he had this little saying. He said, "Well, all it takes is a little practice," and I'm like, yeah, well, he practiced 8 hours a day. So it depends on what kind of practice you have. But the EAS now, it's the emergency alert system, and it's never been used presidentially. But my whole say first straight off the gate, one take on it is, military don't do things to scare people. So there's that. You can get scared because maybe you're not informed on what's going on. You don't know the language, the verbiage, etc. You can get scared, but it's not being done purposely to scare you. So there's that. So a lot of people out there are using the EAS and they're saying EBS, but it's the EAS now, but they're saying it in doomsday terms, like trying to, like fear. And Major Jim O'Connor's one I go on with now. He was a major West Point graduate, special operations. He's now a bishop. It's like he tells people though, if it's not a love, power, and a sound mind, like the Bible says, those go together for a reason, not to be separated. And it says the Bible says this that God didn't give you the spirit of fear, but a love, power, and sound mind. Right? So no fear. So a lot of people out there are using this term in a doomsday context. A lot of them maybe have been in the military. A lot of them haven't even done anything government wise or don't know much about it. So it's all speculation on their part. Um, but if it were used in that context, if it were used in a nuclear context, it would be the final show anyway, because we've never used a presidential emergency alert whatsoever. All right, the EBS, the old school EBS, and the new school ES, they're used all the time locally and state wise. And it's with certain proper authorities. But a presidential emergency would be where he could take control of TV, radio, internet, etc. All our phones will flip, TVs, etc. Boom, 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 boom. Everything be the same. All right, so would that happen? Could that happen? Sure, it could. But I think it would be me. I'm leaning towards more the kind of the fun, like where President Trump says this. All right, now let's paint a real quick picture. If President Trump came in, and even if he fundamentally changed everything, it's really not a change, it's a fundamental reset. So that's really the proper terminology. It's not a change, it's not changing anything. It's a fundamental reset to the Declaration. But if he fundamentally reset everything, the three branches of government, all right, cleaned out the judicial branch, the swamp, etc., but never sought to inform or educate the people on what has been changed. Therefore, all the people who stepped in those positions in the future, all right, didn't know that they're going to be held accountable by people. They can't be held accountable by people if the people don't know about this new way of reset. Right. So that requires education somehow, some way, because there's going to have to be a set standard on what punishment looks like for people who do this, whatever those are. Right. Crimes against humanity. All right. Burning a flag, anything between there. Right. There has to be a set precedent. The only way to set that precedent and reset it is to educate the people on that. All right. This is what we went through. Here's where we are. This is what the future should look like. All right, so there's that first. So President Trump just showed everybody something very key last week. He put an article up, and he only did it once. And, I called it, obviously. I'm always on top of his stuff because that's what you're supposed to be doing. But it says the appeals court upholds a ban on the Associated Press. Well, if they're upholding a ban, that means the ban was already in effect. All right. So the Associated Press now. So when you think of the AP, the Associated Press, who are the most known associated, right? The terminology, got to listen to associated. There's a lot of Associated Press. Well, if they got a ban on them, then all of these others that he hammered, like PBS and NPG or NRG, whatever those are, bunch of those CNN, he's all right. They're already dwindled down to hardly anything. He's been going after MS. He calls them DNC because of Democrats, but MSNBC. All these have been hammered by him, right? So all these other little independents that people are still following, he's even hammered Fox and people still follow him. All right. So all these platforms, if the Associated Press is banned, it means all these. That's also an allusion to saying, hey, it's saying that all these are operating on their own. But then the articles where you read law of war terms like capitulation and puppet government, white flag and surrender, all those have been captured. All right, so that shows you military occupation. Well, with this article coming out that President Trump truth showing that the appeals court can uphold the ban, it specifically said they can't go to Mar-a-Lago, they can't go to the White House. All right, so that's a pretty significant ban. What's in my documents way back here, published in January 2021, been showing everybody this certain code. It's actually titled War Powers of the President. The president's given this during a time of war. All right, well, Section 1550 is your foundational order. Democrat House put it there. All right, all the orders that followed that are President Trump's orders. All right, so the ones that quote unquote Joe continue would make no sense if Joe was real and was really president. So this ban, 47 U.S. Code 606, war powers of the president. President can control radio, TV, internet broadcast. All right. So personally, what I think, this is me. I've made this, I put this out there. Other commanders think it's a great idea. Who knows? You know, but if you'll remember, some people may not know this, but in 2022, I started walking around on the stage with like a penguin. And I reached down and grabbed my rear end and pulled out a wedgie like Joe Biden would do. All right, I know that sounds grotesque and to some ladies, but I'm just making a point. I started doing this, and I looked like I couldn't find the exit. I started doing that on videos. All right, President Trump started doing it after me, looking just like that. All right, so sometimes commanders do get good ideas from people down here. I'm not saying that he's doing that whatsoever, but that did happen after I started doing that. All right, now it could have been a coincidence, and it could be because he's the commander in chief, and I will always, any commander in chief who's upholding the laws and orders constitutionally and declaration, hey, hats off to you. I'll bow down, right? In the right kind of way, meaning bow out, not really bow down like some people think of bow down. So bowing out. But what could be cool is this. Why would you use a doomsday tactic? Because people are already fearful right now. And look at all the average people who don't know the laws and orders and or can't retain everything that I outline. And it's not about me again. I hate using I in first person form. But look at all the people that don't know. There's already books that outline in a chronological order every intricate detail of what's going on. All right. So why would you use doomsday? So that's what I've been talking to, the people, my people about. I'm like, why would you use doomsday? People are already scared. People are already there. Now, the threat could be still there. And I say a threat, it's already pre-planned, but there may make people think there's a threat there and show people, okay, Iran had it this time. Iran's been planning this. And then they lock everybody down. And then you see military do what they're doing. But I think you could lose a lot of followers that way and a lot of people that way by the doomsday effect. Mm-hmm. The doomsday planes were active very, very, very heavily in 2022, 2023, 2024. They're not, I haven't seen a doomsday plane in months, unless it's been around Omaha and the region in which where they're stationed. But haven't seen that. You hear me talking out there. I have a buddy who was a doomsday contractor. All right. Me and him, he and I sent him the photos the night they were up. There were 4 doomsday planes up in 2023 in one location. And it's like he said, anytime you see 2 up in the air, that means, that is real bit. That means a skiff took place. People were in secret, compartmentalized, special compartmentalized information. All right, skiffs. All right. That means real stuff. 4 of them in the air, all 4 of them. Means business, and they were all layered together, and they were all flying with call signs, meaning they're an official business. That was 2 years ago. All right, and so I'm an air and missile defense guy. President Trump just truth as we speak. A while ago, he truth we have control of the skies in Iran now. All right, so that's your air and missile defense systems. All right, straight out the gate. That's my military unit, and we have those in the Army and the Marine Corps. All right. So, and it's heavily Army. So there's that straight out the gate. So all this was pre-planned. So to me, I think what you do could be used. You take the EAS, And I like using a restaurant, a sports bar restaurant for a good setting where there's
Right.
TVs everywhere.
Right.
And you don't know all the families in there, whether they're liberal, Democrat, independent, don't care, whatever, but have an opinion, especially the ones on President Trump or against him. And all of a sudden, all the TVs swap over, every phone swaps over, and you're going, hey, my phone just flipped up? And everybody's phones. All right. Every household, every restaurant, every bar, every church, wherever it is, whatever time of the day, the phones flip. All right. And it's not President Trump, maybe not at first. All right. And then he says specifically, I will be exonerated. That is a very powerful term. I will be exonerated, meaning I won't be acquitted. History won't go down with me being acquitted and, oh, they just let me scathe off, and or Republicans think this and Democrats. Exonerated. That means clear record, nothing. But it also means all these people who held up severed heads of him and are wanting him assassinated and putting that in writing, those are the ones that need him exonerated, not me. All right. And not patriots and not people who know the laws and orders of what's in place. Those are the ones that need him exonerated. So how do you do that? No Republican, no veteran can talk to a liberal whatsoever. They won't listen. They will not listen. So it's got to be something that absolutely shakes them to the core. But I don't think it's a scare tactic. I think that's where you see the cast all in one screen. They do all the disclosures, tell what took place, and then they all remove their mask. That would make unison people go, what did I just look at? In uniform, meaning like every phone and every TV. The only way you escape it is to walk outside. Lay your phone down, walk outside. Right? You can't escape it. You can't change the TV. Every channel's the same. Your phone won't go off. All right. I think that's what the EAS could be used for because it's never been used before. So there's that. And then, if you do another doomsday tactic, if you have another COVID type kind of thing, you're going to lose a lot of people. A lot of people are fatigued. A lot of people will either commit suicide and or flip over and want to. They're already doing it right now. There's a lot of never Trumpers and rhinos who are already turning on President Trump because of Iran, and they have no idea what's in laws. And they also know that they don't know that Q says we're going to save Israel for last. All right. So none of that. They have no clue about that. So you're already losing some in another kind of manner. And so in order to create a new future, a new wave, and new generations behind you and I are not the future. We're not. We are in another capacity, but we're not in another way because these generations back here, all these college kids, what we're talking about, young kids, look, they're going to college. They think college is about drinking and partying and having a good time. They're not studying what is in place right now. They're not all of them. There's a few, but it's tiny few out there who are focused on what they're supposed to. But in order to change, fundamentally reset, but fundamentally change values back to what they need to be, there has to be a shaking of the core somehow, some way. I don't think you do it doomsday. I think it's got to be something to where, again, if you watch, on your 80-inch flat screen and you see, Joe Biden, there's Joe, there's Obama, there's Hillary, there's Bill, there's George, and they all come out on everyone's phones. See, they wouldn't be able to do it just on a news outlet. They wouldn't be able to do it. So that would absolutely shake people to the core in a good way. And then no one can look at you. That they might say, dang, you were right the whole time. They're not going to be like, oh, you Trump people, you. And no, because it would be all their heroes as well. All right, what they call their heroes. So if you do that in unison on an EAS, that's just my take. I could be wrong, and I'm subject to be because I'm not in the command room. But I mean, President Trump did take my wedgie walk and used it. So you just never know.
No, I think you're probably more right than not. So to summarize a little bit, because again, you packed a lot of information there, Derek, and I just want to kind of bring it back to a grassroots level for the people. Um, Not looking for a date or anything like that, but would it be reasonable to say that we're going to see it sooner than later, more like this year sometime?
Well, I would be leaning towards that for one reason. Uh, President Trump invoked the continuity government with Executive Order 13961, December 7th, 2020. All right. So I showed people why would quote unquote Joe, if President Trump is a threat and a dictator and all this, why did they let a continuity government run from December 7th, 2020 to January 19th, 2025? It's a partial revocation, though, meaning we're still in the continuity government. We're still in the military occupation. All right. And President Trump's speeches said that the Great Liberation starts soon and the Great Restoration. We are an occupied country right now. We will soon no longer be. He didn't say a date either. But on January 19th, the last full 24-hour day of a presidency, they made Joe on the last executive order on his resume is this partial revocation, which means it's priority to the people in charge. It means it wasn't just something that was signed back here and forgot about. Well, we're still in a cog, but we're in a partial cog. So the full-fledged cog was December 7th, 2020 to January 2025. So the worst part's behind us. Israel, Iran. Iran's been chanting death to Israel, death to the United States for years. All right, so that's the final act because there's no one else out there that's been a threat. No matter what people think of Russia, that's false. All right, and then everything, that's it. So President Trump there will be a revocation, a full revocation of that by his pen, and I think when that happens, then that's when you're going to see however the revelation is, however they reveal all that. But this, I always tell people, it could go to January 20th, 2029, because that's when 47 technically ends. But I don't foresee that because of one reason. You have your date he gave us with Memorial Day. We've already seen that date go by. All right. And then we have this big birthday with the Army. We'll have our July 4th this year, which will be always a fun stuff. But the big one is next year. All right. And he says we will celebrate every single day from July 4th for a full year, every day. All right. So that wasn't just for Republicans and conservatives. So I think it's going to happen, yeah, somewhere in this year or the
Yeah.
next. And I hate to say the next because I know people don't want to hear that.
Right.
But what people need to realize is this, though, one quick additive is if you're 50, if you're 60, if you're 70, whatever it is, this whole thing, 12 years, you're going to look back and go, "Whew, that wasn't bad." Because 12 years, you and I know when you cross 35, but really when you cross 40, you know how quick a year will go by. It goes by like that. I mean, it's June 17th. My Lord, we're halfway through it.
Yeah.
Look at all the people who were just waiting on President Trump. Oh, I can't wait till he's back in. We're halfway through the first year already. So when you look at that 12-year period, we got to get this right. And it has to be done lawfully and it has to be done correct. And that's how the military operates. So what I try to tell people is that, like, look, if you never went in the military, this is like a hall pass for you from people who've been in to say, look, welcome to hurry up and wait. And welcome to the military. And, so you're getting a dose of it in another kind of manner where you can appreciate it as well, that it had to be done right, had to be done lawfully, but we have to get it right for the future. And if we ever made a loophole, if President Trump ever cut a corner anywhere, that's the one thing that would one little loophole would negate the whole operation, because liberals and vicious, malicious people who right now are in a reprobate, whether they can or cannot be saved,
Mhm.
they'd find that loophole and they'd say, well, you cut the corner here, so laws and orders in the future. If you cut a corner on the law and order, no other law and order will matter in the future. So, it's going to happen. But what it's going to look like, that's the other thing I tell people. Look, I don't know if it's going to be a solid day. Stop. I'm not the command room. I'm just giving my task for the day, and I do it. But but I tell people, enjoy the moment, but they are going to unveil it. The dash will be accounted for. President Trump, look, I know I said one other attitude, but that show this. I'm okay with President Trump's attitude. If the people out there, even Republicans, might think, "Oh well, I love him to death," but he is cocky, he's braggadocious. I believe that's confidence, because when you know what you're doing and you're in that position, I'm okay with that. Well, let's go with that. Let's go with him being braggadocious and egotistical and all this cocky and all these other terms. Well, how would he be exonerated? Again, how would he be exonerated if he was cocky and brag? So you have to look at it from that manner, that he is not going to go down on his record when he dies, and it's written in history as, oh, he did this, he did all these good things, but nah. I will be exonerated means not a blemish on my record. All was planned, all was good. We have it all. We've caught them all. I drain the swamp. I am your voice. I stand between you and them. And he don't mean it from a braggadocious man. He's just saying, yep, I put my name, my image on this. I am the one who did that, but with these people here. So if you look at it from that standpoint, then you'll know that there will be some thing that's going to be like a world standstill and brings people to their knees in the right kind of way.
Absolutely. And I just want to say real quick, Derek, as we close up, I think you're right about it. It will be starting this year, July 4th, because he even said in the comment, the parade 3 weeks, which a lot of people, as we started with the podcast, allude to. So I think it'll start July 4th this year and run concurrent all the way through next year. So I say that as an encouragement against what you were sharing, as a compliment for people to see. It starts this year, and it's a whole year celebration. And that, Nasar Jasar and a whole bunch of other things that are affixed to that. And it's a reset, like you said, it's a reset of the finances, a reset of the country, geopolitical, the mindset, the food, everything across the board. It's all sort of rolled into one. So yeah, I think you're everything. I just was articulating a little bit about.
I mean, and I got to eat better. I mean, that's the other thing. I'm like, oh man, I'm guilty, right?
You're on the road. You're on the road too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that, Derek. So as we close up, as always, where can people just kind of list, if you would, a little bit where people can find your work, and we'll leave that link in the description for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot of frauds out there, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of people saying, I don't even know what number it is now, like fake pages. I can't even keep count. What you block one and report another, and 10 more start up. But the best way to do it is my link tree, linktr.ee/1776 nation. And that pulls up all my accounts. I do have Blue Badge on X, Facebook, on my music page, Instagram. So you can go to the Blue Badges and see me verify all my pages. And that's the best way to do that. That way you'll know. There's some I don't have Blue Badge verification because they're still heavily shadow banned on Facebook for whatever reason. But still, that's the best way to find it. And then I have my websites, rattletrap1776.com is where you get the books. You just click on get more gear, and it'll send you over there. We do have some, I put a cool new shirt out for all you patriots though. Like it says, I knew before you, 45-47. It's got the escalator ride on the back. So it's a front and back. So it's kind of cool for patriots if you want a timestamp there that says that you knew before everybody else. Not in a bad way, but just saying. And it's a conversation starter when you're wearing it around. If you're brave and someone says, "Hey, what do you know before me?" Then you can say, "Go watch this guy." If you don't want to take the wrath by that person's, I'll take the wrath. Just say, "Hey, you got to watch Rattletrap 1776." So, DerekJohnsonCountry.com gets to my music and also my contact for people out there. And then the documents.info are still up. Some of the links don't work. Like President Trump said, they're going to delete some of this stuff, try to delete the evidence way back, but they're still up. And so that's how you find me.
That's good. Well, thanks as always, the one and only Mr. Derek Johnson. We appreciate you. We salute you for your service. Thank you for your time and copious information. And we look forward to seeing you again in the near future. And have a have a great fourth holiday here as we see you around the bend next time.
Thank you. Y'all too. Happy 4th when it comes.
Take care.